So just come to.
They can type out it, but please.
Yeah. I'm stuck with honest, I'm sorry. We waiting on anybody? No, ma'am, we're good now. You're ready.
Okay, 1 second. Go ahead.
Afternoon, today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. The time is now 1:31 p.m. The regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation, doing business as the El Paso Transportation Authority, is now in open session. Commissioner Jackie Butler is presiding as the chair of the board, and the following agenda item will be the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have anyone sign up. Okay, thank you. Next, we have presentation item 4A. That is certificate to Transdex Employee of the Month for December 2025 by Ms. Sylvia Balcazar.
Madam Chairwoman, may I ask if we can postpone the sign until the employee arrives?
Yes, yes, we'll come back to that.
Thank you.
Now move forward to the consent agenda that is comprised of items 5A through 5K. Are there any items the board would like to pull?
Wanted to ask a couple of questions about 5G.
We'll go ahead and pull 5G for discussion. Anybody else have an item we can discuss? If not, then I will make a motion to approve.
I guess combine F and 5G or
F and G together. Okay. Okay. So removing F and G for discussion, 5F and 5G for discussion. Anybody else have any items? Then I will make a motion to approve it to set agenda without those.
A second.
So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Butler and seconded by Mr. Eddie Coleman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And just to know, we do have Councilman Mayo on the joining us virtually for Town of Clint. And I don't know if we have Mr. Castañeda from Anthony, but he was also going to be joining us as well.
It looks like we do. Welcome for joining us.
Thank you.
Would you like to cover 5E first? I think that was one of the, no, 5F, I'm sorry.
F and G, please. There we go. Yes, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Anthony.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. The purpose of item 5F is to adopt a drug and alcohol policy for the Transportation Authority to comply with FTA's 49 CFR Parts 40 and 655. The purpose of this policy is really just to acknowledge that we don't have employees that are required to do drug and alcohol testing because we have no safety sensitive positions, but our contractor Transdev does. So it's just acknowledging that we'll have a policy that states that our contractor will be responsible for providing the policy that we can submit to the FTA.
okay, so the contractor, if there's any drug or alcohol testing, you can contractor
That's
in
correct.
charge of that.
That's correct. And every by March 1, we're supposed to report in what is called the Drug and Alcohol Management Information Systems database, where they give us data on how many positives, negatives, and how many tests they did over the course of the last calendar year.
So there are federal regulations through the FDA that force us to do the drug testing, or force the contractor to do the drug testing to be able to get funding, or?
Correct. It's for safety sensitive positions. So basically a position that drives a bus, dispatches a bus, maintains a bus, and then if we ever contracted with armed security to protect the system.
Any other questions? Do we go on to 5G?
And Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, the purpose of items 5G is to adopt a drug-free workplace policy for the El Paso Transportation Authority. So the drug-free workplace policy goes back to the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 that requires federal contractors and grant recipients, which ETA is proposing to be, to maintain a drug-free workplace prohibiting unlawful manufacture, distribution, possession of controlled substances. So basically for the agency, I'm requesting that the board adopt a drug-free workplace to comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act. And we basically replicated the same policy that El Paso County has, since presently ETA employees are El Paso County employees. Happy to answer any questions there.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll go to approve F and G. I don't know if I need a separate motion, but
We do.
approve that. Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Scott, and second by Mr. Trowbridge. All those in favor say aye.
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 One opposed? Moving on to the regular agenda.
Oh, we just voted on 5F, so.
So I'll move to approve G.
Okay.
5G is fine.
Virginia 7.
A second.
We have a motion to approve 5G by Commissioner Stout and a second by Ed Cote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? On to the regular attendance meeting with item 6A. Appoint the chair, vice chair, and one voting member to the executive committee and to approve the work program of the executive committee. Chair Jackie.
Thank you. I asked Mr. Ando to place this on the agenda as a follow-up to our discussion last month on the amended bylaws. And because of our conversations related to the MPO. I wanted to offer for the board's consideration, because we don't have a very structured system for our executive committee, and it wasn't until last month that it was included in the bylaws. And also that the members previously appointed to the executive committee are no longer on this board. That we instead appoint the chair as a member of the executive committee and the second member of commissioners court as the vice chair in order to allow continuity of leadership of this body. Since the bylaws do stipulate that the chair should be and will be the member of commissioners court. Logically thinking about it, I think it makes sense to have the second member of commissioners court as the vice chair, who would lead meetings in the chair's absence, and also control the executive committee. And then the third member, have a third member of the executive committee be one of the other voting members of this body that we could rotate on an annual schedule, or more often or less often, depending on the will of the body. So I wanted to offer that as a recommendation and to get your all's feedback. Issues with that? Do we have any volunteers for the third position on the executive committee? There were voting members?
Yeah, not really. No, but yeah, I think we had are covered with the two counties.
I do recall that Mr. Rubio had been serving in the executive committee
Yes.
capacity for some time. I know that he's not here today, so I don't know if Mr. Luis would want to offer him up, but I know that he's been involved for
Okay.
quite some time.
Well, we can volunteer Mr. Rubio to continue that position until he tells us otherwise. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you very much for your support. I don't know if this item needs action.
It's action.
Okay. Then,
So basically, you're reestablishing the executive committee, appointing yourself, Commissioner Stout, and Mr. Reese as members of the executive committee.
Rubio, yes.
Approved.
Mr. Bishop and a second by Andrea Carrillo. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Anyone opposed? Moving on to item 6B, discussion and possible action to establish meeting that contain views. Robert's Rules of Order, Mr. Javits.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, just from discussing with the chair, I would like to delete this item for now. And we'll discuss this potentially with the executive committee and return back with a recommendation needed.
Great. I will make a motion to delete this item.
Second. Motion to delete by Commissioner Butler and a second by Andrea Carrillo. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to agenda item 6C, discussion and possible action to adopt the Title 6 program for 2026 to 2029 for El Paso Transportation Authority. Mr. John Endo.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. The purpose of the Title VI program is to comply with the FTA Circular 4702.1B, which basically states that Title VI is to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin in programs and activities receiving federal funds. This plan basically includes our Title VI notice that will be posted on all the vehicles, a complaint procedure, as well as a complaint form, the limited English proficiency plan and a public involvement plan on how we're going to reach out to those with limited English proficiency, a list of investigations, lawsuits, or complaints that may have come against the transit system, which there are none, a list of all fixed route owned facilities, which we presently don't have any, a table depicting the racial composition of the membership of non-elected bodies, which we did include for this body, as well as the Access Advisory Committee, and then adopt our service standards and policies, which will basically ensure that the services, the vehicles, the amenities, when we place them, do not discriminate against persons on the basis of race, color, or national origin. Should the board adopt this Title VI program, we'll ensure that all ETA and contracted transit operations staff are trained and the contractor being informed of this Title VI program in accordance with FTA rules. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions? If not, I will make a motion to adopt.
Motion by Commissioner Butler and a second by Mr. John Bishop. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6D, discussion and possible action to adopt the transit development plan for 2026 to 2029 for El Paso Transportation Authority. Ms. Kelly Blum.
Yes, do we have Kelly on the line from GTI?
I am here.
Awesome. So I'll introduce the item and then I'll turn it over to you, Kelly.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, the purpose of the transit development plan is to lay the path of implementation of transit services throughout El Paso County, outside the city of El Paso, connecting to the Sun Metro service area within the El Paso urbanized area. This transit development plan is a requirement of Sun Metro service expansion program, and it basically lays the transit vision, mission, and goals, documentation of our public participation process, a review of state and local transportation plans, how we connect with other transit services, opportunities for transit services in our communities, information about our required paratransit services, how we will integrate with the regional transit network, supportive growth patterns, multimodal accommodations to support transit services, demand for transit services in the service area, evaluation of our services, our transit service alternatives with financial impacts, maps of our service area, a strategic plan, and then lastly, the 3-year funding plan. Should the board adopt this transit development plan, it will be filed with Sun Metro for their consideration and approval towards our efforts in obtaining an interlocal agreement with them so we can receive FTA urbanized funds to support our operations. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So John just gave you some background on the TDP, the Transit Development Plan. So the purpose of my presentation today is to really give you an overview of what it contains so that then we can answer discussions and questions in that context. So background, as John mentioned, the purpose of the TDP is really helping us become a direct recipient of Section 5307 funds. And in order to do that, we are required to comply with Sun Metro's service expansion policy. So that requires a TDP. It spells out what the TDP has to include. Now, our TDP is a compilation of previously completed and ongoing studies. In most cases, a TDP is a brand new kind of study. So ours is a little different in that sense because we've already done so much work as a community and as an organization to basically develop the content that you would normally find in a TDP. So those key completed and ongoing studies are listed here. They go back to 2018 when we conducted the El Paso County Regional Transit Institutional Options Feasibility Study that ultimately led to the formation of EPATS. And there have been several studies that have been conducted since then. And there's currently a General Public Demand Response Transit Study, the GPDRT study, that's still ongoing and is expected to be completed soon. Also ongoing is development of the fiscal year 27 budget for EPATS. So where we are right now, we've drafted the TDP, we've developed a final version of the TDP. The final version is what we're talking about today. And there's opportunities to make adjustments to it based on your feedback, of course. The steps after that, we adopt the TDP, we execute the service expansion program agreement with Sun Metro, and then they submit a letter to FTA that enables the 5307 fund sharing. So what's in the TDP? John listed the different content items that are found in the TDP, and I've listed them here on this slide and the next slide, and they reflect the requirements of Sun Metro's service expansion policy. So, we have some background information. We talk about the public participation that's happened in the previous and ongoing studies. We talk about existing ETA services that are either operated by or funded by ETA. We talk about planned transit services and how we developed them, how we identified them. We talk about regional connectivity and coordination. And there's a financial plan for fiscal years 27 through fiscal year 29. And we also talk a bit about the performance evaluation program, which is another initiative that's ongoing. So this table just summarizes the existing services that, again, ETA either provides directly or contributes funding towards. We have the fixed route service, we have the ADA paratransit service, a microtransit service pilot, the van pool program, the Gold Route commuter bus service, and then a bike sharing service. The existing fleet is documented here, and there's more detail about it in the TDP. They're talking about the number of vehicles that we currently have in the fleet, the number that are on order, and the usage to which they're put, basically the service that they're operated in. And I'm happy to go into more detail on any of these slides too, if you want to. Existing facilities include 109 bus stops. 22 of those are bus stops that are full featured. They have a shelter, seating, signage, solar powered lighting, information board, and trash receptacles. There are others that have only seating and signage, and then most bus stops only have signage at this time. We also have the administrative office space and the maintenance facility that's currently being leased. Existing multimodal connections include, connections to Sun Metro, South Central, Regional Transportation District services, Socorro services, Amtrak, a variety of intercity bus operators who have stations and pickup points throughout the region, other private providers like through social service organizations or like shuttle services, and then there's the pedestrian and bicycle network. And these things are discussed in more detail in the TDP as well. Now, the future ETA services that are included in the TDP are the product of the completed and ongoing studies and also recent discussion with ETA staff and the EPATS board. They're considered preliminary in the TDP because the GPDRT study is still ongoing, and also because there are some service negotiations that are still ongoing. And I believe we have another agenda item today that speaks about the gold route specifically. So the TDP assumes that all of the planned services are implemented in fiscal year 27 and that the same service levels are then sustained between fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 29. So with respect to the fixed route services, ETA Paseo, listed in this table are the routes. We have existing routes 10 through 50, but 10 and 20 will be modified in fiscal year 27 to accommodate the new routes 11 and 21. And then we have our new routes 11 and 21, 32, 32X, 40X, and 48. 48 previously being referred to as the revised version of Route 84. And listed here is what we estimate the revenue hours to be in fiscal year 27. And then the study in which these recommendations were actually developed and adopted by the board or adopted by the other appropriate party in the case of the Horizon City grant application. For ETA access, the future service is basically we take the existing ADA paratransit focus of ETA access and we expand that so that we're basically commingling ADA paratransit trips with general public trips. The ADA paratransit trips would still be prioritized so that we're meeting our ADA obligations. We've estimated the revenue hours for the commingled services and estimated that it would require 2 additional vans. And the sources for that, these recommendations are from the Phase 2 study, the ADA service plan, and the ongoing GPDRT study. For microtransit, we have the ETA on delay pilot, and the future transit service includes continuing to operate the ETA on delay service in San Elizario and Clint. There's opportunities that we're exploring in the GPDRT study for other future microtransit service areas, but none of those are expected to really come online in the 3 years of the TDP, at least not at this time. We'll see what we learn from the pilot. Vamanos van pool is continuing in the 3 fiscal years. The number of van pools is demand. It's based on the demand for them. There's no particular source study for this cited here because we're not making any recommendations for changes to that program. And that's the same for the gold route as well. Continuing to have the same number of revenue hours provided as are currently provided for the gold route. One future service that's new is the user side subsidy program. We're still developing the details of how this would work in the GPDRT study. And we've given presentations on it before, but just in a nutshell, this is a program where an individual who is eligible for the program would potentially receive a voucher of some sort or some other sort of credit that would allow them to use taxi services, Uber, Lyft, other operators like Project Amistad, where those services are available, and they would get the trip subsidized. And the idea being that in some cases it's more cost effective for ETA to subsidize a trip on an existing provider's services than it is to take a van or a bus to, like, say, a very rural part of the county for only one person. So that's the justification behind this type of program. But again, we're still developing the details of how it's going to work. And the same thing for the volunteer driver program. Again, this is probably not something that ETA would operate, but would possibly contribute funding towards in the form of like helping reimburse the volunteer drivers for their mileage. And again, we're still developing the details of this as well. The final future service is the Sun Cycle bike sharing program, which we're currently in negotiations with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority regarding where the bicycles would be located within the study area, specifically within Horizon City, San Rosario, and Clint, how many there would be, and those sorts of things as well. So there's some uncertainties that are reflected in the TDP, and that's something to keep in mind. In terms of future facilities, we've estimated a need for 92 bus stops, but only signage only. So they're sort of that least intensive infrastructure category. And there's also the new ETA administration operations and maintenance facility, which is currently in the design and engineering phase. The specific construction schedule is still to be determined, but we estimate the facility to be open in 2028 or 2029. So all of this really culminates in the financial plan, but there are some important caveats to be aware of. First, as I've stated a few times, the GPDRT study is still ongoing. So there are details associated with service designs, policies, revenue sources, specific capital needs. Some of these things have not been finalized yet. So we've done the best we can with the TDP based on the information that we currently have. The status of Gold Route funding is also currently under discussion. Previously, there's been funding that comes from Section 5311F intercity bus funding that may not be or might not be continue to be available for that service. So that is still being figured out. ETA is currently talking with Socorro about contracting microtransit service and also with the Regional Mobility Authority about the bike sharing program details. And finally, the calculation method for figuring out what our expected 5307 revenues would be is also still under discussion. But all of these things that we've included in the TDP financial plan, though for fiscal year 27 in particular, will be refined and detailed as part of fiscal year 27 budget development for EPATs. So we'll be revisiting this. So here's a summary table that talks about the operations and the financial plan for each of the fiscal years. There's more detail than this in the TDP document itself, but this is just some highlights. We talk about purchase transportation costs, other operating costs, costs that are associated with administration and planning. And so we've estimated, all of that for fiscal year 27, and then we applied growth factors to represent these things in 28 and 29. The revenues, the only fares that are included here are actually the Gold Route fares because of the current fare-free transit policy for the ETA services. Federal revenue, we've estimated 53 and 11 as a combined line item until the calculation formula is worked out, and then we know how to redistribute those funds. There's a need for additional funding to be identified, which, it may come from sources like Section 5310 or other sources, but the bulk of what's shown here is really related to the Gold Route and that potential loss of 5311F intercity bus funding. We've estimated state revenues. There's New Mexico state revenues that are applied for the Gold Route as well. And if you subtract our costs, our revenues from our costs, we have a local share requirement of $3.2 million, which is, I believe, about $1 million more than fiscal year 26, reflecting the new services primarily because we are potentially bringing a lot of things online in fiscal year 27. On the capital side, fiscal year 27 sees 2 new revenue vehicles. That's the 2 vans for ETA access to accommodate the general public trips. We're not planning on any vehicle replacements. There are some vehicles in the fleet right now that are close to their useful life, but there are vehicles on order to replace those. So those are being accounted for. Bus stops, we've estimated the cost for adding the new signs to the new bus stop locations. We've included the estimated construction costs for the ETA operations facility. That's distributed across fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28 based on the current information available about the schedule of that process. And so then we have our total costs. On the revenue side, some of the funding, like say 5339 funding is being used for the operations facility. But there are other funding sources that would need to be identified as well to meet local match requirements for say the bus stops and then the new buses and everything. So basically the net local share required is about $78,000 based on our assumptions. And that's really everything in the TDP. In a nutshell, I'm happy to answer questions or discuss items in more detail.
Thank you, Kelly. I think you answered most of my questions in the presentation. Just want to confirm that there is flexibility for the plans to change, even when this is submitted.
Yes, with the TDP, we would be asked by Sun Metro to submit an annual progress report. And so that is an opportunity to update things with them in a formal way. But also as we work through the detailed fiscal year 27 budget for EPATs, by the time that process concludes, we'll have actually finished the GPDRT studies and a lot of other outstanding questions will be answered. So there is an expectation that what's in the TDP is like, this is what we've got right now based on the best information we have available at this time. And we are aware that there are uncertainties, but we are working to address those and come up with numbers that are final.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. Remkus? Mr. Remkus, is it possible if needed, once we file this, can we do like an amendment later, like once the fiscal year 27 budget is complete? And I know we're in discussions about subject school participation. So things like that we would like to incorporate into the team.
Yeah, so it looks like based on the presentation, it looks like a very good plan to respond to that. We haven't seen the plan, both Sun Metro and MPO will review it. We've already reviewed 2 so far, SCRTs and Socorros. We commonly have comments based on the plan. Sometimes it's substantive, sometimes it's just cleaning a few things up or adding or clarifying some things. So to your point, whatever's adopted here today, I recommend that the motion includes the ability for the director to modify it based on our comments. But it's a living document. It's not set in stone. So we just look at it once a year. You have the freedom to change it. We use it annually as a predicate to make sure before we issue the split letter that we have an approved TDP and that we received your update after that first year. So you have a lot of freedom to modify it as needed. But just for this first cycle, in case during the review we need some things tweaked or added, just to make sure John has the flexibility to work with TTI and tweak it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I was gonna, I guess it's okay if it's able to be changed. Since I'm new on the board, I haven't had the opportunity to spend all the time I need to actually going through the 75 or 80 page document. So I was gonna ask if there's urgency in doing it today, but if there are questions or changes that you may see that after both my staff and I, then we can bring those up. And
Yes. Based on the timeline for ultimately getting a service expansion interlocal agreement, we're kind of not necessarily up against the clock, but we're trying to do everything timely so that by the time we come back before this board again, probably the next 1 to 2 months, we may have a draft interlocal for this board to consider. And then we anticipate FTA releasing the apportionment numbers for the urbanized area. So that's when Sun Metro would then issue a split letter to ETA, Socorro themselves, and South Central Regional Transit District. And after that piece, that's when we can then submit all the documentation and the policies that this board has adopted to the FTA to then get the direct recipient status. And our goal is to strive to have that all completed by the time the fiscal year ends.
But in the meantime, if any of the board members have questions, they can direct them to you, Mr. Randall.
That's correct.
Okay. Then I will make the motion to approve with the permission for Mr. Randall to
Respond to comments.
respond to comments from Sun Metro.
And we also have El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization as well.
I second.
Motion by Commissioner Butler and a second by Eddie Cole. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6E, discussion regarding the draft transition plan. Mr. John Endo.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Also on a separate email today, we emailed the draft transition plan. Today, I'm not asking for adoption. I'm just asking that the board take the time to fully review this transition plan. Get to this then. Okay, so the intent of the draft transition plan is to basically lay the foundation on how ETA is going to transition out of El Paso County government and be basically its own independent entity as the intent of the organization was established. Just a brief background. As you know, the El Paso County Commissioners Court created ETA in December of 2020 as a local government corporation under Chapter 431 of the Texas Transportation Code. And the intent of this organization is to provide local funding, to include local governments in the funding of public transportation services throughout El Paso County outside of Sun Metro service area. Since ETA was created in 2020, the towns of Anthony and Clint formally joined. The cities of Socorro, Sun Metro, El Paso MPO, and WETEP has joined as advisory members. El Paso County Transit Operations Department was created and a director was hired to provide directions to EPATs. The Commissioners Court approved the transfer of the Rural Transit District status to ETA, and that's pending Texas Transportation Commission approval. ETA is pursuing direct recipient status from Sun Metro following its service expansion process. New contracts have been negotiated with transit operations, Vanpool, and Intercity Bus to New Mexico with ETA as a party. This board did approve a new organizational structure, and El Paso County is in the process of recruiting the staff to fully staff the ETA. This board did adopt a joint budget that takes into consideration the grants that El Paso County has, the local match that ETA has. And then ETA staff is applying for TechStops grants under its name for funding after September 1, 2026. This transition plan basically will inventory all of the, like for instance, the facilities that would potentially be available to the organization, the rolling stock and assets and bus stops, software that the system would use. Staffing is the critical component of this transition plan. And from discussions with county human resources, there are two options for consideration that this board will need to provide direction to staff and the county on. Is either one, the employees would leave El Paso County employment and become employees directly of ETA, or two, similar to my employment agreement, the employees of the current county employees would basically be on a contractual relationship where ETA would buy employee services from the county. The employees will still remain county employees, but it'll basically be through a contractual relationship versus, so the W-2 would still come from the county versus from EPATs. It is the intent that upon the transition of transit operations to ETA, that the El Paso County Transit Operations Department will be dissolved. And per the discussions of human resources, for those employees that elect to not transfer to ETA, depending on the option that is selected, that the reduction in force policy would be in play, since there would be no longer a need for the R8 positions within county government. We continue to work with El Paso County to fine tune and understand how the staffing implications could be mitigated before we present a final recommendation to this board. There's also a series of contracts that El Paso County would assign over to ETA that's inventoried in the transition plan. And then there's also going to be a need for continued services from El Paso County. And I'm in the process of drafting a master agreement that would spell out the services that we would buy directly from El Paso County. Working with the county auditor's office, they would create like a cost that ETA would then reimburse the county for those various functions. It is safe that this would take effect in the fiscal year 27 timeframe. And then lastly, from discussion with the chief county administrator, since there will no longer be a transit operations department, the county would need to designate a liaison to act as the liaison between EPATS and the county, budget the appropriate local match in the county's budget structure, and just provide, like if we're still utilizing county facilities, being able to be that connection between EPATS and the county. Tentatively, that has been assigned to you, Mr. Bishop, because she felt that transit falls in the community services realm jurisdiction. There's also a timeline, a draft timeline of events on how we can get to the independent organization by September 1, which takes into consideration, one, adoption of this transition plan by this board and El Paso County to transfer the transit operations, continued adoption of policies and procedures such as financial management, procurement, safety, transit assets management, human resources and personnel management, benefits, retirement, and insurance provision. TxDOT transfers the rural transit status to ETA upon Texas Transportation Commission approval, that we receive the direct recipient status to ETA upon Sun Metro's issuance of the split letter, and then our approval of the documents that we file with FTA, a financial plan and budget that's approved by this board for fiscal year 27, new interlocal agreements with each of the member agencies for their local match contributions to fund that budget for fiscal year 27, a new master agreement for services from El Paso County, and then a transfer of assets, contracts, and remaining grants memorandum of understanding from El Paso County to ETA, which will be approved by TxDOT and reviewed by the county attorney, the ETA attorney, the ETA board, and the El Paso Commissioners Court. And then lastly, the finalization of the staff support for ETA, whether staff is employees directly of ETA or contracted through the county to provide services to ETA. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the draft transition plan.
I have not specific questions, but I'll start by saying that I appreciate the thoroughness of this, Mr. Ando. I think that when we were in the process of hiring you as the first executive director of EPATS, we knew this was the long-term plan. I personally did not imagine that we could accomplish this within less than 1 year of you being EPATS. So I appreciate how thorough and swiftly you've been able to work on this. And I know that we've been making our way through that checklist over the last few months. I think that the most important aspect of this is the staffing and making sure that we take care of the staff members through this transition and are as careful as possible to make sure that this is a net benefit to everybody who works with ETA. So I would request that next month we have an executive session item with HR to talk about what the options are and give us an opportunity to discuss impacts for each potential option. Hopefully that'll give you some time to talk to the staff members to hear any concerns they might have.
Yes, I have shared the transition plan with the staff today and have encouraged the staff members to thoroughly read it, provide comments, concerns, suggestions, feedback, so that we can take all that consideration to human resources as we work through the possible options for staffing the entity.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. As John indicated, we have reviewed section 7 for staffing essentially. And so we've come a little bit prepared to have somewhat of a discussion on that today, at least to voice our own preferences, if you will. When discussions first began as early as the idea of transition, I know staff was informed that we would remain county employees assigned to ETAs similar to models that already exist locally, such as city employees with the MPO and the RMA, or how the Sheriff's Department is set up. The transition plan now presents, as you heard from Mr. Ando, 2 options, one of which would end county employment and require staff to become ETA employees, which is a materially different arrangement with long-term impacts to retirement benefits and civil service protections. We're also being asked to indicate our intent of whether to transition or stay by February 28th before the staffing model itself has been finalized by the board. If option 1 is ultimately selected, staff who cannot accept that structure are effectively pushed into applying for currently available county positions that may not align with our qualifications or may involve significant pay reductions. And that outcome would have serious impacts on financial stability and quality of life, and is occurring before the board has made a final staffing decision. So we respectfully ask that the staffing model be finalized first so that we can make that decision in good faith. And if the next board is the end of February, we're being asked to make that decision 2 or 3 days later.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, excuse me. Through my discussions with human resources, we collectively agreed that we need to start the discussion now so that we're not making decisions close to the end of the transition and basically telling the employees that either you have to find whatever is open like within a 30, 60-day period, or you're not going to transition over into the organization. Some of the things that are being evaluated as we speak is the retirement. We've already started discussions with, hopefully I get this right,
TCDRS.
DRS, with the help of Rio Grande Council of Governments. So we've already submitted an application. We're technically approved to be a member, and they will be calculating the costs, and they'll be coming before this board at a future meeting to talk about retirement and the implications. We did express that we are 8 employees presently that are presently in county government, that if we were to become ETA employees, we would need to find a way to ensure that the years of service is recognized, that if we're going to have 2 retirement accounts, how the contributions are going to occur. So they're prepared to come and have those discussions. As it relates to civil service considerations, Human Resources is actually doing the research on that and how does that impact ETA as it relates to this transition that's occurring. So all those questions that Ms. Mayor has brought up are also being evaluated as we speak.
Okay.
But timeline wise, it was important, and we all collectively agreed that we need to at least get the information out now. Make sure that the employees are fully aware of what's coming in the implications, gather feedback, and then ultimately present a recommendation for consideration as allowable under current laws.
What is the actual timeline that we're going to be making the decision? Which way to go?
Right now, we've set it for the next board meeting, but if necessary, we have some time that we can push it out. I just don't want us to go too far out because now that's going to impact the decisions of these employees. And if they elect to not stay with ETA, the time for them to find alternative employment in other departments within the company. The last thing I don't want to happen is the implementation of the reduction in force policy because of the dissolving of the Transit Operations Department. And even though if we went with option 2, where we would still remain county employees, it would be similar to my employment agreement through a contractual relationship because the control of employees would not rest with the county, it would rest with this board. because this board is providing the funding. So some of the models like the sheriff's office or even pardon me if I get the acronym wrong, but the adult probation is not necessarily a model that ETA can follow. The best model that they gave an example to me was what the county previously had with, it starts with an E, I'm sorry, the health network. Emergence, thank you, Emergence Health Network, where they previously contracted with the county for employees and paid the county for those services.
May I chime in one more time? I just want to emphasize we're not opposed to transitioning. It's just kind of like laying all these things out as John has indicated. And if the final decision is instead to require staff to become ETA employees and open new retirement accounts, then our preference would be to remain with the county and work collaboratively, hopefully with human resources and budget on alternative placements. I know that at the end of fiscal years, many of the departments submit staffing adjustment requests indicating need in their departments. And I feel like this might be an opportunity if we stay to fill and help those other departments in the need that they're requesting, and we can be housed there as opposed to being forced to applying to positions that are currently open. As John said, I think that's the reduction policy.
Reduction of force policy.
Yeah, reduction of force policy. And so ultimately, that could be a third option that the board considers on our behalf, that we can possibly fill need in other departments that have requested that. And so ultimately, we're just asking for the staffing model to be finalized first before us having to make that, decision. And we'd appreciate the board support in working with human resources and budget if it is that you decide option one is how you want to move forward.
Okay, thank you for your input, Ms. Mayota. I think sorry? Oh, yes.
So I just want to add to I think the biggest concern to me is the benefits, the retirement, because what I understood on the plan is whatever we have now, it freezes. So essentially 2 of us are already vested. That means we have to restart that whole process again. Time spent will be dismissed.
Actually, no, that's incorrect.
Well, I think that we have time to have these discussions with HR. Sounds like there's a lot of open questions about impact here, and we have time to have those discussions. So what I would like is for us to take the next month to work through some of these questions with HR directly, and make sure that we are fully briefed on impacts next month's meeting. Hopefully by March, we'll have all the information we need to make.
Does that also mean that our deadline to give John a response of February 28th can be extended until we have these questions and concerns hashed out?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think that's right. I have a real quick clarification question. So if they stay on as county employees and they're the contract option, they would continue to be as county employees, so their benefits and vesting that would not get interrupted.
That's correct.
But if you did the other option, I heard you talking about having TCDRS come in and still possibly being able to provide the benefits.
Yeah, so
retirement benefits for the employees if they transition into.
Yeah, so what will happen is the years of service will continue regardless, because we're still in the system. The only difference is that there's going to be
contribution levels.
Well, there'll be 2 separate accounts, because the county account will basically end, and then there'll be a new EPATS account. But it is my recommendation to this board is to replicate the same benefit structure and packages that the county has, regardless of the model we go, because we're paying for that already in the grants anyways. So I understand we do like a 250% contribution. So on my recommendation to this board is to maintain that if we elect to open up our own separate retirement system.
Okay.
So that there's no
benefits, there would be a different account, but the same level of employee contribution and employer contribution.
That's correct. And the years of service will continue. The only difference is you'll just have 2 accounts. And the closed account will still generate the same 7% interest as we're doing in the new account. So if I was to retire tomorrow, I would basically, the retirement system will just basically combine those two accounts at the end and then give us a payout.
Yes.
Is TCRDS, whatever it's called, is it defined benefit or defined contribution plan?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
I think to your point, Chair, I think it'd be good to have somebody when we go into executive session with HR, it'd be really good to have a spokesperson from the retirement to answer some of these questions directly. It's a big difference. If it's defined contribution versus benefit, that has a big impact on that transition. The other question or clarification I have is potentially there's an option 3, because I don't think for your new hires are pretty clear that, or can you clarify that, but any of the 4 that you're pursuing to hire would be directly ETA employees from scratch?
No, for right now, there'll still be county employees, but we're putting in the job announcement, make it explicitly clear that your county employees until, and that this position was transferring over to the LGC. So we don't get in a situation where we hire them and then they feel like they're county employees when.
So I would throw another option for your consideration that the new hires go straight to ETA. So you don't have, and depending on what happens with the existing members, you may have some of the existing stay on as county if that's what the board decides. But I think then I would suggest the new hires should go straight to ETA so we don't have this, they're starting from scratch. But that's just for your consideration.
There may be a timing issue with that,
Could be.
considering how.
Because also because these positions are funded with grants that are in the county's name.
Right.
Yeah.
So EPATH would have to take on that expense, which we're not in a position to do.
Makes
But
it
it's a good point.
But it's something that I should at least mention as an alternative plan. There's also a hybrid 2A that if for whatever reason we're not able to work out a contractual relationship with the county, that perhaps we could talk to the city of El Paso and follow the model that the MPO and the RMA is doing and make us all city employees for the purposes of retirement pay and benefits. But there could be some severe disruption there because there could be a fundamental difference between city benefits and city
There is.
compared to the county.
And just for clarification on TCDRS, the additional item to consider, I would think, is the participating organizations have the decision to make whether they want to match at $1 or up to $2.50. So the only consideration, the consideration would be whether PTA is going to match at the same rate as the county, because if they match less, then the employees would be retiring at a lesser amount.
Yeah, there's also the option, not just the employee contribution, but you can do, I think, between 5 and 7% from employee contribution.
Yes, 7% is the max. Yes.
Right. Yeah, so the county does max. It's a 7% employee contribution and 250% employer contribution. So any change in that, any reduction in that would absolutely affect. Sorry.
Mr. Ando said those would stay the same rates they are now.
That'll be my recommendation. And there's one more caveat too on the benefits aspect. Human Resources is also researching the question because the benefits for the county is managed by the risk pool. And they're trying to understand, could another entity like ours, whether it's in a contractual form or if we were ETA employees and wanted to buy benefits back from the county, if we can still be a part of that risk pool. So those are some of the questions that they're also researching as well. And
The benefits cost can be significant.
yes, they can. So an alternative option, if for whatever reason we couldn't buy from the risk pool, I believe the Texas Municipal Risk Pool provides benefits to smaller governmental entities like ETA, and that's an option. And that's the entity I'm also looking at for insurance for the entity.
There's also a county risk, like a statewide county. So the municipal is probably for like city-based, but there's also, I think, the Conference of Urban Counties, so it's for Texas.
Is that
Association of Counties.
And then you're saying this
Yes, but
closed?
they weren't taking any more
Texas Association of Counties?
For TAC. That's what we had been informed through Council of Governments, because we thought that would be a great opportunity for a lot of council governments to use TML for health insurance. And it's decent, but the county set a standard. So I know that everyone knows in terms of health benefits, how the county recognizes that for their employees. So, but TML has been our carrier for years. That's one significant number of years.
And I don't know if I missed it or not, but aside from the consideration for the staff benefits and that kind of thing, is there an advantage, disadvantage in them being ETA employees versus the ongoing model?
That's what I'm trying to get from human resources.
In other words, if we continued along the current path, would it in any way, keep you from doing business efficient?
It would not. It's really about the control of the employees, is what's changing. Because right now, excluding me, the control of the employees rests with the Commissioner's Court. Since the Commissioner's Court is getting out of public transit, now that control is going to shift to this board under the direction of the executive director. So how do you have that contractual relationship with an entity that doesn't have necessarily the control of the employees? So City of El Paso has done a great job in that model with the MPO and with the RMA. The county hasn't done something like that to the degree that the City of El Paso has, minus their relationship with Emergence a while ago. So it's navigating through all of those processes.
And when you talk about contractual, that could be like a financial contract, or it could be a delegation of authority.
Basically like a delegation of
Okay.
authority. Because like if we use my contract as the basis, I'm accountable to the Commissioner's Court as the county's Director of Transit Operations Department, but I'm also accountable to this board. But in my contract, this board controls like the wages, the hiring, the termination, and directs the county on how they want this position to be. But the county also has some involvement as well. But this board has to take action first before the county takes action. So the question is, with everybody going under like kind of an arrangement like that I have, how do we navigate through that? Because ultimately the controls are going to rest with this body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, the way that the county's done with the HN, it used to be with HR, and right now we still have legal contract, like their legal representation is their county employees, and yes, for their salaries and for their benefits with the county. So I think that model should be able to work.
So I guess in that case, but they're buying like like we used to do that too. We used to buy county attorney services because the attorneys were housed in the county attorney department, for instance. But since the county's not going to be running transit anymore, there's really no department to house us. So that's what makes the situation a bit different.
I really do have another.
Sorry, something else to consider. We, as multimedia service supervisor, we support all county commissions and boards. If they become independent, there's a question of us supporting ETA with their live streams and hosting their meetings on our YouTube channel. We might have to double check on that.
I think that's
So
one of the services that we would.
Yeah, so in the master agreement that I'm drafting and also in the transition plan, we've laid out services that we would buy. And communications department is one of them. And I've listed the items such as continuing to host these meetings and do the virtual, even providing this meeting space. There's going to be a cost to the county for us to utilize.
I just wanted to add, when we have this meeting again in the executive session, can we be part of that, of the staff that's currently here? So we can have questions to the TCDR representatives here, so we can understand.
I would recommend that we do the TC, the retirement discussion in open session. Just so that the board can hear.
Yes, absolutely. And my preference is that you all meet with HR and with the retirement representation. one-on-one prior to our meeting so that you can have time to ask questions directly.
So what I've asked the staff, which let me count, one staff member has pushed back, but I've asked the staff to thoroughly review the transition plan, list all the comments, questions, concerns, suggestions to my attention so that I can discuss those with human resources. I will bring in human resources and have a global discussion. To just not share that information, just arbitrarily go straight to human resources is counterproductive. It is not going to get us to the ultimate decision making that this board needs to make. So I think that's the best approach because I just don't want to blindside human resources with a litany of information coming out of left field. And I'd rather just give them a straight list of all the issues and concerns at once so that they can investigate those thoroughly and come back to us with a best recommendation for this entity.
I think here, John, we have expressed what our concerns are. So
I don't want to, Brenna, with all due respect, I don't want to argue with this in front of the board. But
I'm not arguing.
I would rather us discuss this internally, and then we'll come back to the board with further information.
That's fine. And like I said, we've expressed the concerns openly here is what I'm saying. So we can have that set up hopefully soon.
I think that to answer your question, Jesus, that the board can meet in closed session, in executive session, and then maybe bring in the staff after we've had an opportunity to discuss as the board. That's okay. This is I think I just want to make sure that the staff understands, that this board understands how important this issue is and how sensitive it is. And I think a willingness to be flexible on all options to make sure that you all are taken care of.
And in any transition, in the 4 that I've done in my career, this is the most sensitive subject. When you transfer from a city government to a separate transit authority or from a city government to a county government, yeah, this has always been, it's trying to mesh the pay, the titles, the benefits, and the retirement so that collectively you have a uniform approach, but also making sure that the employees are not disenfranchised because of the change in governance structure.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. On to the next item.
Item 6F, discussion and direction regarding the New Mexico Department of Transportation and MDOT Park and Ride Express service in downtown El Paso and Los Cruces. Mr. Jonado.
Okay. So some background on the New Mexico Department of Transportation Park and Ride Service. In 2009, the Commissioner's Court took a series of actions to authorize a partnership with New Mexico Department of Transportation to use federal demonstration funds to pilot an intercity bus service between El Paso, Anthony, Texas, and Las Cruces, New Mexico. The service started in August 31, 2009, and under a series of multiple intergovernmental agreements, the service has continued. The latest intergovernmental agreement, which was approved by this board and the Commissioner's Court, took effect in August 2025 for a 1-year period with 3 one-year options. Since then, the route is utilizing FTA Section 5311F Rural Intercity Bus Funds passed through TxDOT to El Paso County to contribute to this route. And then New Mexico matches those funds at 59% with their state's funds. So we're not paying any local match to these grant funds, whether through the county and through EPACs. This service operates basically Monday through Friday between 4:30 in the morning and 10 in the morning, and then again from 3 in the afternoon until 8:40 p.m. And they contracted the third-party operator, All Aboard America, to run the service through March 2027. We've been a silent partner in this service since its inception, with New Mexico basically making all the decisions and notifying us of those decisions. This past calendar year, a series of events have occurred which is affecting the future of this route and requires more intervention from us. One, the current route as it's designed is urbanized and no longer connects a rural area with two urbanized areas. Anthony used to be rural, and then in the census that changed and became urban. So the route potentially could not be eligible for 5311F funding. Furthermore, the Texas Intercity Bus Study makes mention that this route is really not an intercity bus route. It's a commuter route and has commuter elements. And it didn't score high in the Texas Intercity Bus Study. And they basically left an open-ended question to TxDOT. Should this route continue to be funded utilizing FTA Section 5311F, or should it be transitioned to utilizing like 5307, which means that requires discussions with Sun Metro to access those funds. Furthermore, we've been, the National Transit Database stated that the reporting of this route cannot be reported in our National Transit Database report. Therefore, we can't count the passengers, the revenue miles, or any of the statistics because it's an intercity bus service, and intercity bus service is not public transportation. So it can only be reported on a simple form that's filled by TxDOT. So we're not able to consider any of the elements of this route as part of any formula allocation for federal funds, either on the rural side or the urban side. We've not gotten definitive data from New Mexico on how many people are actually using the service within El Paso. So it's making it hard to understand the benefits of service to El Paso. The service hasn't been fully evaluated for value for some time by New Mexico. The service continues to increase with no levels of control or cost containment. Our present share is going from 718,386 to proposed 894,946 next fiscal year. And just as an FYI on this, TxDOT generally receives about 9.9 million in 5311F funding. So it could potentially be covered by that if one, our grant application that we just recently filed is successful, and two, TxDOT is comfortable with continuing to fund this route with 5311F. It should be noted that for this last biennium for the coordinated call for projects, they're actually using older 5311F funds because they recognize that this route wasn't serving rural areas, it was serving urban areas. And the older funds that they're using was pre-census change, which is the reason why we're able to use it at least through August 31st of 2026. So we're now, as you're aware, predominantly urban, and we're pursuing 5307 urban funds to cover our operational and capital needs through Sun Metro. Our access to 5311 rural funds is going to decline, so we're going to have to fund these operations going forward utilizing the 5307. Under the current Sun Metro service expansion policy, those funds are distributed based on population census and doesn't include necessarily revenue miles or performance based on like the van pool program or any passenger miles that the system generates. So it could put us in a unique situation to where we may not have enough 5307 funds to fund us, as well as if we have to take on the gold route to also fund that route in its current condition. So the above mentioned issues, we started discussions with MNDOT and also eventually included TxDOT. So we started asking questions to understand the route, and MNDOT at the time was not willing to share. So because we weren't able to get the information, I issued a notice to terminate participation effective February 28th of 2026. That got their attention, and since then, we've been collaborating, talking through the points that I just listed above, discussing that ETA's desire to be more involved in the oversight, marketing, and planning and development of this route, so that we are collectively solving the solution versus it being one-sided where they're making the decision and they're just being told, fund this. One of the requests that we've asked of NMDOT to rescind the notice to terminate is a new amendment 1 to the current interlocal agreement to address the following points. 1, designation of NMDOT as the lead agency with ETA responsible for any FTA compliance, since ETA is the one providing the FTA funds as a pass-through, monthly meetings, an annual report, mutual agreement on service changes, mutual agreement on stops, so that we're making sure that the stops are placed accordingly, that we can request fare-free service and cover costs for fare-free transportation solely within El Paso County, and also pursue interline opportunities with Greyhound and FlixBus should this route remain in the intercity bus network, so we can continue to demonstrate that this route could be intercity bus. A service plan to evaluate the route's performance, a marketing plan that would be prepared, which would include ETA's branding on all the route's assets, defining what NMDOT's responsibilities are, defining what ETA's responsibilities are, and then clarification on reporting, so we're reporting accurately, and then determining a plan for future funding if the 5311F is no longer available to us, and how we're going to collaboratively come up with a solution to keep the service going. The right to receive documents related to the route, including data, procurement documents, or anything to help us understand the role of the route, who to notice to when there's notices that need to be issued on the route, who at the organizations are administering the route, and then lastly, a process when disputes occur between the parties. Basically, if we're not able to mutually agree or accept some type of amendment with NMDOT, it's recommended that TxDOT find an alternative arrangement to continue to pass through the funds to MNDOT to continue to service. TxDOT would like us to continue this arrangement and would like us to see the two parties work together through an amendment so that we can have our continued participation in this route. I do want to state that staff took the time to ride the route last week to understand who rides it, where it goes, the overall operation, and who it serves. We did learn a lot from riding this route. There's a large minority population that uses this route. And while less than 10% of the, 10 passengers on the trip I rode traveled through El Paso County, within El Paso County, most of the riders did go to Las Cruces. The stops, particularly in El Paso County, passengers were riding from downtown to Anthony, because it is a faster way to get to Anthony than it is to take Sun Metro to West Side Transit Center and then transfer to our services to get to Anthony. We also noticed that the stop in downtown El Paso is on a side street with no passenger amenities, and there were a line of people crowding on this sidewalk, and that the stop in Anthony is in an abandoned supermarket with no amenities. The service quality of their contractors seems reasonable. It does appear that the schedules may need optimization. In the case when I rode in the evening, 2 buses were following back to back within 20 minutes of each other, and our bus had less than 5 people on the bus, and the other bus ran empty. So that kind of is attributing to the higher costs that were ultimately being borne with the 41%. So as of the writing of this report, we are collectively working in good faith to demonstrate the desire to continue to fund and operate this route. And MDOT has shared documentations with us. They are gathering data so we can better understand trips within Texas. We are negotiating an amendment 1 to the intergovernmental agreement to address the points that I've brought up. They've agreed to comply with the NTD requirements and give us only Texas-only data so we can report that properly to TxDOT. And they did help us in submitting a 5311F application that was due last week. One thing that they did suggest that we included in the application is the potential to add a stop at the hospitals of Providence Trans Mountains campus, which is technically rural under the map, under the urbanized area map that's been provided to us by FTA. So if we were to add a stop there, it would be a direct connection from downtown to this facility versus people utilizing Sun Metro's Brio to the Route 19. We did ask for in our grant application to TxDOT $1.8 million to fund the service for another 2 years. However, if the route is not funded by TxDOT, should the board of directors wish to continue this route, this would need to come from our 5307 allocation that we're proposing to receive from Sun Metro. And then also one thing we talked about is the potential of working with Sun Metro to see if we can move the route back into the downtown transit center and incorporate the stop placement into our existing license agreement that we have in place. So that's kind of a summary of where we are with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Happy to answer any questions about the staff report.
That was a lot. That was a lot. And I had the benefit of working and talking through some of these issues with Mr. Ando right around the holidays.
Yeah.
So, so from my understanding, clearly this is a very valuable route, especially to residents right across the border in New Mexico, who have to travel into El Paso County for various reasons. And so it's a unique situation because it's between the two states. And my hope is that both TxDOT and New Mexico DOT realize how critical this route is and do everything they can to support its funding. From my understanding, there is a possibility that if we can't come to, if TxDOT and New Mexico DOT can't come to an agreement for grant funding for these, there is a possibility that it would negatively impact our 5307 budget here at ETA. And so there is a possibility that it would be to the detriment of the services we're trying to provide in other parts of the county, or could provide in other parts of the county in the future. But I'm optimistic that we're not going to have to get there, especially if we're able to successfully negotiate this amendment with New Mexico DOT, right?
Yes. And then hopefully we score well with the coordinated call. One thing that TxDOT did bring up is while they recognize the attempt of putting the stop at the hospital, it is kind of also skirting the intent of 5311 Act, and it does make them a little nervous about that too. And I'm not sure, Mr. Rimkus, if we were to even pursue a stop at the hospital, do we need some type of concurrence from Sun Metro? Because technically that's still in the city limits and in your service area.
Yeah, we probably have to talk about that. And then if we're looking at the interlocal with you stopping at our stops, that it might be addressed there. Definitely have to.
Also, a lot of moving parts to making this potentially work.
A lot of moving parts, but I think also opportunities, right? So if we're seeing a big need for riders for a route between downtown and Anthony, right? I think there's an opportunity for us to even look at the services we're providing in those areas to make sure. So, how would you recommend? Does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to add, I think the 632 route that's to Las Cruces of downtown. And on my travel, I noticed about 5 to 7 students that got off at NMSU. The other 10 individuals went to the other transit stop in Las Cruces. And then I came back on the 857 route, and that bus that came from El Paso dropped off about, I want to say about 15 to 17 students. So what I saw is it's education purposes that these kids are traveling, and it's somebody doesn't have a car, especially somebody that young, especially due to the I-10 traffic. $660 for 7 months of monthly passes. I think it's a very good service for the students. Not only like the other people visiting their families or going to work, but the students itself, I think it's a good service that the students will lose if we lose. I just wanted to voice it out there because that's a benefit. Because they'll have an option, UTEP or MSU. I remember when I was in Texas Tech, I had to, or when I lived on Las Cruces, I had to pay out of state tuition, but they had an agreement. So it's the same thing. We have an agreement with the MSU and UTEP. They have that agreement that if you go into either school, you have in-state tuitions. Having those that cost will be great.
Right.
So I have a question. Do you have to buy a ticket ahead of time? Do you have to schedule your ride, or you can just step onto it?
Step on $3, yeah.
So in that way, it's not like what we usually think of as intercity service, where usually you're buying a ticket ahead of time.
Correct.
Not always, but most of the time. It seems like there's maybe a contradiction in the way that TxDOT is seeing it as not eligible as because they're not really considering it intercity service.
Well, they're consulting that did the intercity bus study. They're looking at the guidance and the circular at face value. And the circular basically says intercity bus service is connecting rural areas with 2 or more urbanized areas with meaningful connections to the intercity and the air and rail networks. So that means basically the route would need to, I was going to hypothetically say, start in Fabens,
Right.
connect to El Paso, and then go to Las Cruces.
Yeah,
that's rural
connection is missing.
is missing. And the other missing piece is the meaningful connection to intercity bus, rail, and air networks, meaning a relationship with Greyhound, whether it's in Las Cruces or downtown El Paso, or some relationship with Amtrak, or it's not on the airport, it's not on an airport route, so that's not necessarily a requirement. But those are the 2 components, which is why it's scored well and it's been on the fence.
But you also mentioned that FTA won't allow the ridership data to be reported in NCD because they consider it intercity.
Because they consider it intercity because we're using 5311F intercity bus funds.
So that's the only reason.
That's the only reason.
Okay.
If we switch the fund source to 5307 or 5311, then we can report it into NTD.
Okay.
And then we can get the credit for the revenue miles and the passenger miles.
And what's the current cost to the county for this route?
Right now it's about 786,000. It's proposed to increase to 894,000. So at the minimum, to continue the same level of service today, either we need to get 894 from TxDOT through their coordinated call on 5311F, or we need 894 out of our 5307. And
which is new, that's a new cut because you've currently been paying for out of 5311.
we've been paying.
Would it represent a new cost?
It'll represent a new cost to ETA.
The full amount.
Because the full amount, because then we're now taking it out of our proposed allocation.
Good.
It is. And I'm just gonna actually have a separate email to you about this very issue on how that impacts the service expansion process.
Well, Madam Chair, I think you're right that it's kind of an opportunity because it seems like there's a lot of coordination on the actual operation of it that could maybe be improved. And there's some, if it's capped, there's some improvements that could be made to make it more effective and maybe more cost effective even.
Mm-hmm.
If not, then the opportunity is what can be done to supplant that service because yeah, it is a really valuable service. But I think technically you could get from El Paso to Las Cruces.
You could
on SCRTD routes, but those are local routes, not express. It would take forever.
take a
So
2 hours and 45 minutes if you do it from using Sun Metro to ETA to SCRTD or Sun Metro to SCRTD with another transfer to another SCRTD.
yeah. So in effect, you probably just lose those
We lose
people
those
who are
runners. Yeah.
using it right now. We don't want that. Yeah, so I guess Not that I have any advice, but just, I hope that all the parties involved are willing to work together to continue the service in a way that is sustainable.
So, right.
It sounds like the will is there.
The will is there from all.
From TxDOT and New Mexico docs, and obviously ETA. I think your recommendations in the proposed amendment are fair. If we're going to be providing 41% of the funding, then I do think that we should have some say in how it's provided, and I think Sun Metro obviously has to be part of that discussion.
And ultimately, if for whatever reason it has to come into the 5307 piece, we need to find a way on how we can mitigate the impacts to the ETA system so that we're not cutting our service to continue a route that we don't necessarily have full control over. And that's where that route optimization would come into play. Just on another note, we did have our first monthly meeting with New Mexico yesterday. It was a very good discussion. They're even talking about that they believe that they need to optimize the networks in the southern portion of the state because of this route. South Central is rapidly expanding in the south portion of the state. So how could we make it so that we're not duplicating each other and make sure that we're paying the right cost for the service? Because the service ultimately costs, I believe, $1.4 million to operate. And that's fairly expensive for an intercity bus service. So I believe there's ways that we can bring that cost down and make it reasonable, still meet the needs of the community, but not pay such a high amount. And that's really the intent that we're asking in the next.
Well, any recommendations that you have, Harrison or Sun Metro, help us think outside of the box on this to find solutions. We appreciate that. Do you need action on our part now?
No, I just wanted the board to just be aware of what's going on and that we're actively working on an amendment 1 before this board and then go to the commissioner's court. And then I'll start bringing in Sun Metro and into the discussion in case of whatever reason we're not successful with the 11F and we have to go to 7. And also the additional stopping or area.
And you mentioned that if for whatever reason ETA decided not to fund the portion from Anthony to Westside Transit Center, would DOT still keep the line between Anthony and Las Cruces, or?
No, it looks like that they would basically, I think they would terminate in New Mexico.
They would still keep it.
They'll still keep the route, yes, but they would end the route in New Mexico.
And is there, so, and there wouldn't be a natural connection point between the Route 10, in other words, not coming all the way down to the transit center?
To the El Paso Transit Center. I mean, that could be an option that could be considered. It would require additional buses added to Route 10 and additional costs to ETA. But we would have to do an analysis to determine would that benefit outweigh paying this more expensive charter bus cost of having their service coming to El Paso. That's something that we could look at as a backup plan, because then we could now count that ridership as part of NTD reporting, which would bring additional dollars to the urbanized area for all of us to use and potentially supplement Sun Metro services in between your lower frequency routes. I just wanted to keep the board apprised of what's going on with that, and hopefully in the next 1 to 2 months, we'll have a recommendation for this board to consider and take action.
I appreciate that. I think we're all in agreement that we would like to see this route continue and be successful. Right? We support his efforts to do that. Yes.
Just a reminder, I think we forgot about the employee, employee recognition.
We're actually coming up to transit.
Thank you. Blind spot back there. I apologize. Okay.
Do you want to do that one first or do the reports and then just go to that? Or basically at the end of the.
Yeah, we can go ahead and just do the reports and wrap up with the recognition, because it's gonna be pretty brief, I imagine. Okay,
That's agenda item 6G, receive a report from the executive director regarding the Paso Transportation Authority staff activities. Mr. John.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, really quickly, busy last month and a half. We recently completed 8 grant applications. I thank Ram for her assistance on doing that. We got those to TxDOT. One of those is a intercity service to continue the gold route service. We also, based on the suggestions of you, Madam Chair, we have also included an application for an intercity bus study to Odessa for oil fields transporting people to the oil fields. And we also pursued an intercity bus application to connect El Paso, Babins, and Tornillo by basically using 5311F to fund our existing Route 40, as well as transit operations, maintenance, facility engineering, design funds, support vehicles, technology, and possibly funding to do the general public demand response study, should this board adopt that. We've also have launched Fare Free. Ridership is increasing. There are times where we're experiencing some overcrowding, so people are very grateful of this service. I presume Transdev can give you more of an update on how that's going, and hopefully next month we'll have some ridership numbers to compare so you can see the change in ridership from paid versus Fare Free.
On that one, I did get to go down to the office and visit Susie. As encouraged to hear, and I don't know if Jesus maybe give a brief comment. That free fare seems to be having an impact. Or more, you saw notice more ridership on it go, but.
Correct, but I also, because we meet with Transdev on the Lucia operations meetings, I always ask them, and that's something that they told us. That's what we found out, that we're bypassing because we're full capacity. So that is good. And you can see it on these, like, you can see a lot of kids walking, their students, and now I guess they're trained, because now they put their hand and you see the bus, they'll start putting the emergency lights, and then they'll start, when it's safe, they'll go over and they'll see the kids run to inch the person.
I've heard from community members, and I know we're gonna get to Transdev, but just saying how helpful it is to not have to worry. We were at a community cleanup a couple of weeks ago, and a neighbor came out and said that there was a few people that would go out to where there was some illegal dumping that would hang around there and ask for help with bus fare. And now that it's free, that's really improved that situation in the area. And so for those people who really, really need to use the buses for transportation and don't have even a couple of dollars to do that each way, I'm sure it's been hugely impactful. So thank you.
Jesus has been doing great stuff with operational related items and has been focusing on contract oversight and working on our fleet compliance. Anna has been helping us with marketing events. She's been doing a great job in facilitating board meetings, learning a lot from Annette to take on the responsibilities of board secretary. And then Annette has been very helpful in just making sure that our organizational status is up to snuff, setting up the bank account. We're now official in utilizing the name El Paso Transportation Authority with the Secretary of State. And she's just been making sure that all of our documentation is in order for the organization. I've included our system ridership report, performance report, jurisdictional data, the MPO agendas for December 2025 and January 2026, and then updates from TTI, the Regional Mobility Authority, and the long range calendar for the board and the El Paso County Commissioners Court. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may ask if we can go back to employee of the month and then do the transfer report, Madam Chair.
Yes. So I apologize again for having to move this to the end of the agenda, but I think we would like to present a certificate of appreciation to the Transit Employee of the Month, Mr. Gerardo Martinez. Congratulations, Mr. Martinez. Outstanding performance, hard work, and dedication.
Thank you.
Very much.
Sylvia, did you want to say any few words, or Jennifer?
Jennifer.
Oh, well, I just wanna thank Gerardo. He's been with ADA for a year, I think.
It's going to be here.
It's going to be a year. He's a great example for all of our drivers. He's safe, he's responsible. He makes sure to let us know of any incidents or any issues on the road or any issues with our ADA clients. So he's a role model for all of our drivers.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. You. And then, Madam Chair, if I ask, we do the transit report.
Good afternoon. I just want to give you our performance update for December 2025. So December 2025 was a good month. Everybody was excited about the low fares after the 22nd. So that was really great for all our passengers and they really appreciated that. Our preventable accidents and non-preventable accidents were zero. We had none. Our on-time performance for our fixed route was at 90.2%. Our on-time performance for our paratransit was at 94.5%. And our rides per hours for paratransit was 1.02. Our underlay ridership has been going up. That was 35 and we had 68 trips. Our fixed route ridership was 11,158. It's great. And our paratransit ridership was 682 with 625 trips. So you can tell that they're enjoying the no fares. Our clients in our service area were 167. Our clients in the outside area are 17, which gives us a total of 184 clients. And our PMs for the month, we had 31 PMs. 31 PMs were completed. That gave us 100% on our PMs, which is our preventative maintenance on our vehicle. And the month of December, we were fully staffed, but unfortunately, going into January, we did lose some drivers. And then we also gave some of our drivers a road supervisor position. So we had to start hiring in January. And we started a class on January the 12th. And so that's going on the back.
What was that average ridership like? What was it in November? Do you know?
In November, I think it was maybe 9,000. Yeah. So, and remember, it was from December 22nd. So we didn't have the whole month. But I think January so far, it's like we've already passed, right? The 10,000 mark. Wow. So, yeah, it's been getting really busy. It's great. We're really busy. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then just, Madam Chair, for San Rosario and Clint, on the lay ridership month after month is increasing. So it's providing that door-to-door service that you guys were looking for. And it's also providing that connectivity to Socorro, the Mission Valley Transit Center, and El Paso Community College. So we're pleased to see that month after month that underlay is doing good. Hopefully it's meeting the needs of your community.
Okay. Further comments?
No closed meeting unless
Okay,
we have.
then we can go ahead and make a motion to adjourn. I'll make that motion.
And all those in favor, say aye.
Right?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Adjourn meeting at 3:15.
Thank you, everyone.